Hi, welcome to the October 2018 Houston Clutter Coaching Meetup Group. I'm Gayle Goddard, professional organizer, and my business is the Clutter Fairy. Say hi.
Hi.
We have a little audience here today. We're back for a live in-person meetup group, and today we're going to talk about overwhelm and how to deal with it, get past it, hopefully have a little bit of conversation about ways to get around overwhelm so you're not stuck all the time. How's everybody doing? It's a good day today. I get phone calls all the time when people want to call and ask me to come and look at their projects and talk about what they need to get done. And usually somewhere in that conversation somebody says to me, I'm totally overwhelmed. Whether it's the daughter that's calling about the mom, or because she wants help, she wants me to help the mom downsize someplace, or whether it is the couple that's lived in the house for 30 years and they want to dig their house out and try to move into a new location after all their kids are gone, except that they have 30 years of stuff. Doesn't matter who calls me, somewhere in their conversation they're going to say I'm totally overwhelmed. And when we face that overwhelmed feeling, it's always about, I see the project, I can't imagine what to do about the project. It's so big, it's so huge, and I can't see my way through the process. I don't know how to carve a path to the end. I can't visualize it. And so some of us are very adept at, okay, I don't see what the end is, but I'm going to dive in. And so you try to dive in anyway, and you go in without much of a plan and without much of a thought, and you think you're going to get it all done in a hurry. And you go in for the weekend, and you've heard me tell this story before. You go in for the weekend, and by the end of the weekend, you put in 16 hours of time, but you have made it worse instead of better, and then you feel super defeated by the end of the project, and it's not complete, and what are you going to do? If you have that experience that I've tried to do it in a hurry and get it done in a weekend and I'm unsuccessful, then you feel defeated and you're still overwhelmed. The project is still there and you still haven't made any headway. You've just sort of stirred the pot a little bit. I think the problem is generally something that Ed talked to me about a long time ago, which is we overestimate what we can get done in the short term. You know, when you're making your daily to-do list, it always has 35 things on it, even though there's only 6 hours when you can do something and you have to have lunch in there. We always overestimate how much we can get done in the short term. We think we can get a whole lot crammed into a really short period of time. Because we have to do it, it will fit into those few hours. And that's a fallacy we tell ourselves. But the other fallacy that we tell ourselves is we underestimate what we can get done over the long term. So we undervalue the 30 minutes a day strung together for 6 months that we can use to accomplish a goal over a long period of time. And we don't multiply those 30 minutes by every day. You don't multiply that in your head and realize how many hours and hours and hours that is. And so we don't believe that the long-term short chipping away is going to accomplish anything. We don't feel like we're going to make any headway. And usually you start out doing that little 30-minute process and you clear a little bitty space that's, you know, here's a little corner of a shelf, and you clear off a little shelf. And you get to the end and you look at this and you compare it to the rest of the house. This is the first thing that people do, right? They think, I've only cleared this and I have all that to go. And then they feel like I'm not accomplishing enough, I'm not making enough headway. That means that this work was invalid or not useful. And the truth is, that 30 minutes plus the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day will end up to many, many hours of work. And so it's a matter of deciding that you're willing to stick with repeat, repeat, repeat until you can accomplish something, right? If we are always looking to cram it in the short period, and most of us focus on what do I have to accomplish today, except that if you've got a big, 30 years of backlog in your house, there's no way you can unravel it in a day or a week or a month. When I go and work with clients like the couple that were retired, and I moved them into assisted living. They moved into the Bayou Manor Tower. We spent 16 months with me going over there for 3 hours every 3 weeks for that all those many months to get all the way around the house to dig them out. And you know, the first few trips I went over there, didn't look like we got much done. My car was full when I left. I had an entire stuff full of stuff in my car to take to Goodwill. But I had to do that 20 times. That's 20 carloads in my car, plus 2 trips of Salvation Army truck coming to take books away, plus the guy that they hired separately to empty the garage and haul all that stuff away. So any kind of a project that is more than a day's worth is going to require some repeated focus over and over and over again. So instead of planning for it as a project, you really have to think of it as a habit that you tackle with consistent, repeated willingness over and over and over and over, right? Nobody likes organizing as much as I do. This is my happy place. I go and do this with people, and I think it's a lot of fun. So I'm having a great time, but I know that you're not. So part of my job is to try to make it more fun with you while we're working together. But I know that the person that calls me is the person that hates the chore a whole lot. So you know you're fighting your own dislike of having to do something that you don't really want to do. You're spending your own personal free time to basically clean the house, do something that isn't fun for you. But it's about your quality of life. So it's one of those things that you have to adapt a habit for over the long term. And if you think about it as, I know in your head the house has become a project that needs to be done. And it seems like it's finite, like the house has walls, right? And the stuff kind of stops at the walls, in theory. Sometimes it spreads out into the yard, but eventually you get to the edge of your property and you have to stop, right? Like at the end of your property. But if you have filled up that piece of property in some way, it feels like it's finite because there's, you know, parameters around which you can't stretch. And the truth is, it's a finite amount of things, but you will continue to live, you will continue to shop, you will continue to go to the grocery store, you will continue to have friends over, receive things in the mail, have life, you know, happen, and more things are going to be coming into your life. So there is a backlog portion of the project, but the ultimate project is you have to develop this habit of how you go about managing clutter in your life day to day. And so adding that mindset in, changing your mind about it so that you're thinking about how can I build this habit instead of how can I finish this project. And then the trick is to do enough work in your habit, whatever your habit is, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but whatever your habit is, you need to be doing enough work so that you're defeating today's clutter and chipping away at yesterday's clutter. And you'll have to do that for a while until you get all the backlog caught up. You made your circle around the house a few times and dialed it back. And then you keep doing the habit, and maybe it doesn't take as much time. Maybe you can do it less time every day or every week or whatever, because now you're not trying to also do the backlog and the regular stuff at the same time. You're just trying to keep up current. You're trying to keep your maintenance routine going. And so thinking about it in terms of, let's build a habit. So the perfect habit example that I have in my head is Ed walking. So I've known Ed for a long time.
A million years.
A million years. But you started walking when? In 19...
Well, I got really serious in 2004.
Okay. So 2004 you started walking every day. And he walks every day. So he even had corneal replacement surgery where he had to, like, they put gas in his eye and he had to lay on the couch in a certain way so that it's, you know, healed correctly.
Retinal detachment.
Thank you. And even on those days when he was allowed to stand up every hour or whatever, he would walk down the block and back as his win for the day, as his walk for the day. So his habit was, I'm walking every day and anything counts. So when he had surgery, he only had to walk this far, but it counted. And, you know, there's been times when he's walked 6 miles or 10 miles or whatever, you know, huge times. But every day it's been his habit. So that was his game to play, and he made it something consistent. And I've known him for a long time, and he's been doing that without fail for forever. And now he just walks with the dog instead of by himself. But the point is, he goes out every day and walks. I have not developed this discipline. Wish I could. But it's a habit that works for him. So that's not my habit, right? And it won't be your habit. Everybody gets to pick their own. And the thing is, how much are you willing to focus on it in your regular life? When can you carve out some time to do it? Now, you make time to brush your teeth every night before you go to bed, generally, we hope. And, you know, you shower a few times a week, generally, we hope. I'm sure the people that work with you hope that that's true. You scrub the toilet, right? Like, there are things that you do in order to maintain your environment so that you don't...
litter box.
Right? That's a perfect one. You got to do the litter box. That's very important. So there are things that you do that aren't fun, that are for the maintenance of your comfort and well-being in the house. And maintaining the clutter is one of those habits that you get to develop, right? So let's talk about some of the ways that you can sort of step past overwhelm and see if you can then develop a habit about working on the clutter. I want to make sure I do these little pieces here. Talked about that one. So the next thing is to do something to get started. So most of the people, when I talk to them about, I show up and I'm going to do an assessment appointment, we walk around, and I can tell the slump of the shoulder and this, you know, this sort of sinking, defeating feeling that the person is mirroring to me as they walk around the house and show me the house, because they've been yelling at themselves about it for a long time, and they're embarrassed and ashamed for me to see it, and they're walking around the house and they're thinking, oh, this is such a wreck. I just know it's such a wreck, and I can't face it, and I'm a failure as a human. So scratch all that. Let's just call that. We know that's where you're starting from. We know that's what you believe, and I'm going to say to you, you don't have to believe that. You don't have to believe that. You are not incapable of doing this. It's just the emotional mountain that you have to climb over about it, right? And any step counts. Just like in Ed's walking example, any step counts. So right now, you're overwhelmed and the curtain has dropped and you're frozen in place. But if you can allow yourself to do anything, you're getting yourself in motion. And being in motion, it's just like walking, right? Like when you finally pry yourself off the couch and go walk around for a little bit, you know, when the Fitbit says, do you want to take 36 steps before the hour's over? In other words, get your off the couch and go do something for a minute. If you can get yourself up and do something, you are starting the ball rolling. And it doesn't matter how small. So you have to be willing to be your own cheerleader about this, which is contrary to what you've been your own critic all this time, right? Like, I'm sure you could write me an entire article about all the ways that I disparage myself because I don't accomplish this task. But we're, you know, okay, I got it, you're expert at that. So let's work on being your own cheerleader about it instead. If you can go and do something, take any step, it doesn't matter how hard, how easy or how quick, you're at least in forward motion. So maybe your game to start with is, I'm gonna spend 5 minutes. I'm gonna spend 10 minutes. I'm gonna empty the top of this little table. I'm gonna reorganize this one drawer. I'm gonna go through today's mail every day. Maybe that's your game. You can start slowly and build your way up to a better habit at whatever speed works for you. And the idea is to do a little bit every day, do a little bit, or every week, or whenever, you know, everybody has their own calendar and their own schedule and their own workload, right? And maybe you're too tired when you come home from work. Morning people come home at the end of the day and they're wiped out. So maybe you have to take your 15 minutes out in the morning when you're awake, right? You have to work it into your schedule about when it's going to work for you, and take those 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and see if you can't do something, and then go da 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 da, Gayle's happy dance. You gotta do the happy dance about it and try to be pleased with yourself that you are chipping away, because this is the ultimate chip away project. I'm telling you a story about myself, which is really kind of embarrassing. I am not exactly, you know, the home repair chick. And the toilet seat broke on my toilet and I had to replace it. And one of the things came off easily like it was supposed to, and the other one was like, oh hell no, I'm not coming off. And so I was in there with tools, and I have blood blisters and bruises, and I spent 2 hours trying to get this thing off. And there was some point where it was like, okay, I'm not being defeated by this, it's just a toilet, okay? I'm not calling a plumber to take the toilet seat off my toilet. And so eventually I was with the scissors and the pliers and the screwdriver, and eventually I peeled the piece of plastic off and we were able to saw off the, you know, it was this whole thing. But it took me forever, and it should have taken 5 minutes. And it was so annoying. At the end, it was very rewarding to be able to go, I hung with it, I hung with it, I hung with it, and now I can sit on a toilet seat that isn't broken. Isn't that exciting? This is the same process for you. Like, you're gonna be down there sawing on this piece of plastic, and you're gonna be chipping little pieces off and going, oh my God, I'm 14,000 hours away from being done. But you don't wanna focus on that. You wanna focus on the little chips of plastic that are getting bigger and bigger as you go. That's my point. I know you can always look up and say, the room is full, I'm never gonna get through this, it's always gonna be terrible. Or you can be celebrating the fact that you stayed focused for 15 minutes on working towards the end, okay? Start with the area that's easiest for you. Start with the floors in the pathway. Start with the floors of the closet. Start with one little linen closet. I mean, it can be any area of the house, it really doesn't matter. Find something that isn't intimidating. Because I know there's areas that are intimidating. I know there's places where you come and start and you look at it and you think, this is all my mother's china and it's all gonna make me cry, or this is all the clothes that I can't wear because I'm not that size anymore and I'm super embarrassed, and you know, this is all gonna make me cry. You don't start there. Don't start with the stuff that's gonna be super hard for you because you wanna make headway. So start someplace that's easy. Go into the one area that doesn't bother you, that you don't have an issue with, that you don't have a lot of investment in. For me, it's the kitchen. Like, we've talked about this a million times. I don't care about the kitchen annoys me, I don't like to be in the kitchen. So that's super easy for me to do. Everybody can do a linen closet. The linen closet's super easy. It's stuffed full of big pieces of fabric. Half of it's for beds you don't own anymore. Half of it's sets that you would never put out for anyone to see in person because it would be embarrassing. And it's always, when you pull it all out, and it's a whole closet, but it's really only 20 things because they're all so big, right? It's 14 pillows and 2 sheets, and you pull it all out and you're done. So it's an easy win. This is what I mean by starting with something that's easy. Just find the area that's a place that you feel safe, taking a first step and spending a little bit of time. One thing you can do to help yourself is keep a log of the stuff that you do. Because, like I said, we underestimate the cumulative effect of long-term focus, right? So if you're writing on a piece of paper, I took 5 bags to Goodwill, I cleared out that drawer, I emptied the closet rod on the left side, I took out a whole bunch of kitchenware and donated it to yada, yada, yada. If you can keep yourself a list, when you start to flag, when you start to feel like you're getting nowhere, you can go back and read your list and go, oh, well, 5 bags plus 4 bags plus 6 bags plus 2 bags plus, oh my gosh, look at all those bags. Like, they will have faded in your memory, but if you need a little remembrance that it's okay and you're gonna get somewhere and you've made headway, you can go back and look at your log. And it doesn't have to be super elaborate. You just wanna say, I worked on the desk drawer, I worked in the kitchen and pantry, you know what I'm saying? Just a little reminder so you have some idea of how much work you've done. And 6 weeks from now, it's a long list. And 6 months from now, it's a really long list. And you have a lot to look at. And remember that you've accomplished something, you've gotten somewhere. Turn one more page. you'll be working on the backlog for a while. If you are going to spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, if you're really rocking it, you're going to be chipping away in little pieces. You're chipping little chips out of the iceberg, right? Eventually, you'll start to see a difference, but it's a long haul. When I was working with the family that we moved out, there's 3 adults working on it for 3 hours at a time. We put hundreds of hours into this job by the time we were done, between all the people that came and did something at that house. So it's going to take you a while to get to the place where you've got 100 hours behind you and you've got 100 hours of work into it. But this is where the concept of a habit comes in. You're not trying to get to the end in a hurry. You're just trying to practice the habit of doing something all the time and doing it faster than you're adding to the house, so that you really do have a net loss of contents of some amount, so that eventually over time you've gotten through the backlog. If you have a burst of energy and you want to spend a little bit of time and jump in on, okay, I'm going to do it's Saturday and I have a free day and it's raining outside and whatever, and so I'm going to spend 2 hours on this and I'm going to bump my habit up for that day and make it a little bit longer. Then you can make, sort of a bigger chip on the backlog, right? Or maybe you're going to call somebody and say, come and help me. Call somebody like me and say, come and help me. And then there's 2 bodies chipping away at it. But in the meantime, you get to develop your own habit about, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going, and that's the goal, to just add a new habit into your life, however small it is. And when you get better at it and it feels less stressful and it feels like you can stand it for more than 15 minutes, then maybe you can do it for 20 minutes. It's not something that you have to do in a punishing way or a disturbing way. Try to make it be something that you're willing to do over and over the long term. And when you're sick, maybe you have to stay home and sleep, you don't have to work, and so then you can sit there for 15 minutes in your bed while you're feeling cranky and you're on drugs, and maybe you'll forget that you did it and you won't notice. You will throw away more because you're sick. You understand the idea, what I'm saying here. The idea is to aim for a small habit that will build huge results over time. We never get to the place, there's no intersection of, I have plenty of free time and I'm willing and I can get the project done in this sweet spot right here on my calendar where I'm super enthusiastic about it and I have no other commitments. Like, that spot doesn't exist, right? If you're waiting for the moment where you go, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready and I'm happy and I'm gonna work on it and it's gonna all be great. Yeah, like, that's not happening, right? So wedging in a little piece, clearly she doesn't have a lot of excess time. So maybe she's got to put 10 minutes in because her professional work is calling her name. But even 10 minutes a day is still taking the chisel and chipping away at the iceberg, right? Maybe she can pull up a stack of mail and sort through a bunch of old mail in 10 minutes and then go back to work and not be worried about it. Or maybe when you need a little mental break, you can sort of, okay, I can't think about that project for a minute. I'm going to sit over here for 10 minutes and sort old mail and then, turn back and come back to it. It's just one of those things where you have to decide where you can give your time based on what's going on in your life and still make headway, still repeat the process over and over again. And it may be that on Tuesdays and Thursdays you can't do anything, and on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday you can do 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour. Doesn't matter how you do it, just build it and keep trying. And if you miss it a day, it's just like, it's just like weight loss, right? You miss it a day, you screw up a day, you're like, okay, I'll start over again. You just have to be willing to come back to it and make a little chip all the time. Who else? Is anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I've made a lot of progress in my house.
Yay!
In some areas. Like on the first floor where I have people over and they see that area. But upstairs, and I guess the things downstairs, there wasn't as much of an emotional connection, and that was easier for me, and that was a more presentable part of the house. And then
Because that's like the public space, right? And your
Right.
private space is upstairs.
right, so the personal, private, that piece is overwhelmed. So I see some physical evidence of making some progress, but I'm still overwhelmed with certain areas that are more difficult for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And what I have a friend coming over this weekend, so I found sometimes my mom will come over, or sometimes a friend will come over, and they're not judgmental, they're positive, they're helpful, and that helps to motivate me. So I'm trying to take advantage of that more when I can.
Having a helpful partner is great, right? Because then you're not doing it by yourself. That's a really good
That's
point.
helped me. And I found like certain resources, like where I can take certain things, to either donate or to sell, like at a consignment store, and I'm kind of gaining some momentum in that regard. But certain things, I'm a little hesitant, maybe I don't know, I don't want to just throw it away. I'm a little hesitant to dispose of it because there's emotion, or there's time, or there's money invested in it. So sometimes that holds me back a little bit.
So I think that money invested in your stuff has that's sort of a recurring theme for you. Like that really hangs you up.
Yeah.
So what allows you, for the things that you've been willing to let go, what allows you to let go of them? What has made those things okay?
I'm taking things to a number of different consignment shops, so I'm getting some money back to help recoup the cost.
Okay.
And I'm like putting it back into my house and like remodeling projects or things like that.
Right, okay.
Or like I'll donate things if I no longer like it, or it's just not my style anymore.
Right.
Sometimes it's easier to dispose of certain things, but certain things are harder for me to.
Right.
So if I still kind of like it, but I don't love it, but I still see some value in it, it's a little hard for me to kind of let it go.
So one of the things that I like to do, particularly because a lot of my clients are women, and so I end up processing a lot of women's clothing. I take a lot of women's clothing goes in and out of my car. And we've actually taken huge quantities of stuff to the women's shelter in Montrose, because they're servicing a clientele of people that are running with the clothes on their back and their kids and nothing else. And so it feels good to me when I get good clothes out of people's closets that I can turn around and put them into a shelter environment where I know people are in desperate need. And that helps, it helps my clients, I think, feel better about, like they're taking their money and it's sort of their way of investing in the women's shelter without actually putting cash out. They're putting their clothing cash into the women's shelter, and that makes them feel better about it. The money that you've spent I'm using clothing as an example just because I know that that's one of the places where you collect stuff, and so the money that's in the clothes is sort of a sunk cost at this point.
There's that sunken fallacy.
Right. It's a sunk cost, and so you can get some money back, but you don't get a huge amount per piece. I'm sure that if you keep the churning into the consignment stores, you get at least some cash flow flowing, even though it's a fraction of what you originally spent on it, but you wore them and they're your stuff and whatever. Given that the closet is one of the places where stuff backs up, I'm guessing that you have a whole lot of things that you really, really love. And then the things that are a step down from there, which you're just describing, the I like it, but I don't love it kind of places. Maybe you can try to shift that category in your head to, this is no longer a category I'm willing to wear. So who can benefit from my clothing cash? Do I want to consign it, or do I want to send it on somewhere? And find the service receiver that makes you feel like you've spent that money well. There's so many places that women's clothing is in support of people, and hooking up with that window. I mean, even if you go and donate to resale stores and you don't try to, if it's stores that you don't want to do the consignment with and you can just go donate to them, it's a way to spend the sunk cost Just try to think of it as you passing your cost on to somebody as a charity to someone else, and find a recipient that makes you feel good about that movement and see if that helps. We keep working on that one. I keep chipping away with you on this, and I keep like, yes, ma'am.
Pennywise resale shows in Fort Bend County, but it's like it's one that I like to donate to, and I just did my closet and didn't get rid of enough, but I got rid of a lot. But they take it and they use it either for women's shelter, or the proceeds go to
support their work, their stuff that they're providing, right?
I like to give it to them.
Yeah, see, that's something.
That's a good place.
I've heard the term Pennywise. The people, my clients in Sugar Land talk about it, and I've never actually been. I should make a trip out there to see it, but it's one of those things where the nature of advertising is that they convince us that we have to spend a whole lot of money in order to own that. And then, we drive the car off the lot and the price drops 25%, once we cross the curb. Like, it's the same with the clothes, right?
The problem is I donate and then I have to go in and shop.
Yes. Well, but if you think of it as if you put in 50 pieces, then you're allowed to take home one, right? Like, make it a huge exchange number. Like, you can't go and shop until you've got 50 pieces to take. And then you're not going to come home with 50. You might come home with 3. That's a great ratio. That's a net 47 out, right? So that's great. That's a good solution. Okay, who else has questions today? It's so hard when I'm talking to people and working in the first time that I go in somebody's house, and I'm like, okay, what are we going to work on today? Show me where we're going to go. Okay, we're going to work on this thing. Okay, and I just walk up to the counter and start pulling stuff. Pull. And you can see the look on the client's face. They're like, what are you doing? Like, this is what you're paying me to do, man. Let's get over there. I can go over to it because I don't have the emotional wall that's in between me and the stuff. And so part of what I'm doing is just reminding you that there is no actual wall between you and accomplishing this task. It's just a task that you are not comfortable doing. But it's not impossible. And you can't walk over to it and start messing with the mail, right? Sometimes you have to do it in little bitty increments. Sometimes you have to go over to the mound of stuff on the counter and you have to take a handful out and you have to walk away and not be staring at this while you're working on it, because that's also shutting you down. So you take a handful and go over there and sit for your 15 minutes and recycle and shred and trash. And you find one piece of paper you want to go file, and you go file it, and you call it a win, right? Like, if you just decide that I'm only going to work on this countertop until it's clear, and I'm going to spend my 15 minutes every day working on that countertop. And then when you get to the bottom of that countertop, you're just going to feel like you have hung the moon. Because, oh look, I spent my 15 minutes, and it's 3 weeks later, and now it's empty. How exciting will that be? It's totally possible for you to get there, and getting from 0 to any step is really just a mental challenge with yourself about saying, I am willing to try, I'm willing to make the attempt, I'm willing to do 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And set the timer. We've talked about this before. Get out the kitchen timer that ticks. Get the timer on the iPhone and let it ring when 15 minutes is up, and consider yourself released, right? Making any step and repeating that step as often as possible will get you there just as fast as, an army of people are going to get it done in a weekend. Like, unless you have an army showing up, you're going to have to tackle it 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day until you get there. And I don't have the ray gun that evaporates it for you, and also evaluates it according to how you would decide. So we haven't invented that yet. So I don't have that capability. But you have the capacity to evaluate, and you can judge the stuff and decide what can go. And if you can just ask yourself when you're willing and when you're in the best physical, mental shape to do it. We've talked about this before too. You want to be well rested, you want to be well fed, you want to be alert. I'm a night person, I do better in the afternoon. He's a morning person, he does it at the crack of dawn, right? I'm asleep and like, stop waking me up. Like when he's out there making mad things happen, I'm like, oh. You got to pick the time that works for you, and consider, you know this is a mental challenge already, so you don't want to come to it with low resources. You want to come at the best part of your day, and knock your 15 minutes out then. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
How do you keep the motivation? Because that's my issue.
Yeah, everything you do is great when you get started, but how do you keep it going long enough for it to become a habit when you'll usually be bored with it after 1 week and you'll obviously forward?
So, boredom is a problem because it's a chore, right? So how do you get the happy dance from brushing your teeth? Your teeth feel better after you brush them every night, right? So part of it is, what do you think, Ed? How do we answer that question? I mean, keeping it going is being glad every day that you make the streak longer.
It kind of depends on what motivates you. Now, I worked with a life and business coach at one point who said, your thing is you like to win. So anything that you turn into a game, you can accomplish. And so my thing, that's how I do it. There's a game, I keep a log, I keep track of the hours I walk or run or how many laps I swim in the pool. It all goes into the spreadsheet and tallies it up so I can see how many days, how long my streak is, and all that sort of stuff. And but if your thing is there's something you've been saving towards, something new you want to give yourself, set a reward at a certain point. Decide that when you've racked up 3 weeks of doing it every day, you get to do this thing, and it probably shouldn't be buy something.
Maybe it's go to the movie.
Yeah.
Make a trip.
Yeah, manicure, pedicure.
Oh yeah, there you go. See,
Celebration,
yes.
Celebrate.
Yes,
yourself.
because you can't not be happy until it's 100% done, because 100% done is a long way off, right? So you have to be able to cheer. This is why I talk about cheerleading yourself. You have to be able to be happy with, I accomplished a week, I accomplished 2 weeks, I accomplished 3 weeks, I cleared the counter, woohoo, and reward yourself in some way.
I also think that your idea of a log or diary is a terrific one. It could be as simple as take a piece of graph paper and line out the weeks and check off the days. But the idea of putting down specific things you did, 3 bags to Goodwill, 2 bags of trash. There's a real natural tendency to kind of devalue the past and to devalue our past accomplishments. And when that stuff was in front of you, it was insurmountable obstacles. So don't devalue it. Keep track of it. Reflect on it. Be proud of it. And I think writing it all down in some way that you can return to occasionally is good. Good question over there.
Yes.
I think the log is very important, and I think that people really need to actually do that. I did that when I was doing running. I used to write down my mileage because we had it. I ran around Houston, ran across West Texas, across New Mexico, Arizona, and I was in California, and I was running up the Pacific Coastal Highway. And then something happened. But I mean,
that's how many cumulative miles you had?
When you're only, I only ran 5 miles today or something like that, it doesn't seem like a lot. But keeping the log like that just was like, wow, I really am doing something. I'm going someplace.
5
Right?
miles is a lot of distance.
Not with some of the people I ran with.
But see, everybody has their own judge, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, 5 miles is like hospitalization, right? But that's great, and it's a perfect example. When I go and work with people in their
12,000 steps walked.
Right, 12,000
About
steps.
6 miles.
That's a lot. When I go and work with people in their offices, when we're working with paperwork, that's like the worst, right? It takes so long, and every piece of paper is a decision that somebody has to make, and it's just the worst. And you get to the end, and we've like cleared off. I sat with somebody this week, and we cleared off the desk, the top of the desk, and the file cabinet that was there, and a little thing, a box that was on the other side of her. And at the end of 3 hours, it was like, oh, well, we can finally see the desk. And she was sort of like, oh, it's, you know, now we can see the desk. And it's like, yeah, but like, here's 3 bags of shredding, and here's 2 bags of trash, recycling. Like, that's great. Like, that's a lot of decisions that you did all as one big pile. So don't be judgy about what you didn't accomplish. You want to be looking at what you did accomplish and be valuing of that. Like, this is really great that I am taking this stupid bag of recycling, so I will never have to touch this piece of paper again, and I'm going to go throw it in the recycle bin. And how awesome is that, right? So this is the game that we're playing, right? Is that we give ourselves credit for what we're able to accomplish, and however small it seems in comparison to the big project, we need to be celebrating those milestones and celebrating the cumulative effect. Okay?
Photos are good for that too.
I'm sorry?
Taking pictures.
Yes! That's a very good point. If you take a before and after photo, then you'll remember how bad the desk looked before you did the 3 hours of work. And then you can look at the other end and go, oh yeah, it was like 2 feet on top of my desk before we started, right? That's an awesome thing to do. When I work in people's offices, I usually spend several appointments because it's been really, really bad, and every piece of paper is potentially identity theft, and we have to be really careful and touch everything, right? And so digging around an office that's been long neglected will take 15 hours, 20 hours by the time we're done. And there's 2 of us, so then it's really 30 man hours, 40 man hours that we're putting into reclaiming the paper and getting it all out of the way. And the result is negative space, right? It's like clear negative space, which isn't usually a win. It's not as, you know, oh yeah, it looks pretty again, awesome. But you forget how much you had to wade through to get there. And so keeping track of how many times, you know, when I'm dragging out, we took a picture one time. I had a client whose husband was balking at having help. And so we took a picture of all the bags that I was putting in the car, and the bags that we, like, I lied, all the trash bags, all the recycle bags, all the donation bags, and I took a big picture of it, and so that she could have the picture and say, see, this all left the house. So don't give me BS about it, that's what I'm saying. You guys have to value what you accomplish and let other people help you be excited about it. Like, create a partner where you say, hey, I did my 15 minutes today, you want to see what I cleared off? And text them a picture so you can show them that you did something. Yes, ma'am.
I had somebody one time, we were talking about verbal oohs and ahs, and we need to hear more verbal feedback. And she jokingly talked about in her family for July 4th, they practiced oohing and awing for the fireworks. So when you talk about, you know, let me show you.
Right? Get your friends to go. That is awesome. Look at that. This is 50% of my job, to go, ha, we cleared the desk today. It's really something that I get a lot of it. It makes me happy to clear it off, but I want to reflect to my clients that being excited about that and being proud of yourself about that seems like the silliest thing, but it's all part of motivating you to come back and do it again, right? If you just go, oh yeah, I only cleared the desk, the whole rest of the house is still a wreck. Like, you're just beating yourself with a stick after you did a bunch of work. Like, why do you want to do that? So don't give yourself a hard time. I'm sure you spent hours and hours giving yourself a hard time. Let's try to do it different, right? Part of the habit is being happy that you did it and taking pictures and keeping track and rewarding yourself and being enthusiastic. And when you're having trouble, to call somebody to do it for you. I'm having trouble remembering that I'm working hard and I'm staying with it, and I need you to tell me that I did great today. Like, ask for some help in being enthusiastic about what you're doing. And don't call your mother-in-law, and don't call somebody that's mean to you about it. If anybody in your life ever complains to you or makes fun of you because your house is not perfect, They are off the list. You cannot call them. You have to call your nice friends who are going to go, woohoo. The girls that go shopping with you and convince you to buy more clothes, you need to call them and let them tell you that you did a great job. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
I have one, well, I have 3 sons, but one of them, he likes to come, and he'll say, Mom, we're gonna, when he does come, it's kind of like, for him, it's just throw everything away.
Yeah.
Like one time in my bathroom drawer, he just took the whole drawer out and dumped it.
Yeah, no. Can't do that. And here's, yeah, like, right?
Maybe it's a male thing, because my boyfriend said the same thing. He's like, it's really easy for me to just get rid of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I want to have some say.
I walked in the house and my other son had actually cleared off my desk. And I'm looking, I said, well, where did all the stuff go? He said, oh, it's still there. I'm thinking,
Where? What'd you do
I'm
with
sure
it?
there was a few things that probably didn't belong there because I have, it becomes the dumping ground, you know what I mean?
Right.
But he's just all there, and I said, well, okay, I'll be looking for it.
So the person that can take the drawer and do this is the person that didn't spend any money or have any investment in the contents. And it is disrespectful to do that. It's not their stuff, and throwing it out is not the solution. It is a path, but it is not a path that is going to reinforce your relationship with them.
But you know, my mother was like, she saved everything. I can remember when we lived on the south side of Indianapolis, when we moved somewhere, because you know, she lived in that house for 20 plus some odd years. My brother and sister-in-law moved her. My mother had canning jars in the basement with jelly in it that she had done. Well, my sister-in-law was so tired of moving it, she just trashed them. You know, and it was kind of the same thing. But then, as my mother went in her old apartment, after she was getting in trouble with, she got down here, and it was like, you know, they were going to call adult protective services, and, you know, it was a fire hazard, so I'm like, I go, oh, this month, we got to get rid of this stuff. Yeah. And then she sewed, and she redo things for people, and people didn't want the clothes, and she's, oh, I can redo the zipper or this or waist. She could do all that, but it's like, she could only do so much, and then she had piles of stuff, and it was like, oh my God.
Well, and this
My
is...
husband had to go over and clean up her apartment.
Yeah.
And it was like, I would take
nightmare.
stuff out without her being, her knowing it, and then she wouldn't know what I took.
Yeah. And then she was defensive and difficult, and so this is what happens when someone else takes over your clutter. When it becomes someone else's responsibility because you can't manage it yourself anymore, then you lose control of the stuff. And someone else makes decisions without your processing through it, and you end up losing a bunch of stuff that you'd rather not lose. Better for you to do it now while you have the capacity. I've said this a million times. If you want the judgment and control over what stays and what goes, you have to do it while you have the capacity, which is now. The people that can come to this meeting have the capacity to do it when they go home. And what you can do now will be something that someone else doesn't have to take over for you and do later. Because they're going to have no investment, like your son, no investment in your bathroom drawer. Yeah, you don't want to do that. And so, better to do it now. And better to be in the habit. And I have to say, I've said this before too, that when my mother passed away, she had been listening to me, and I had been working with her in her house for a long time. And she moved at 63 to North Carolina, and so that move process filtered a bunch of stuff out. She let a bunch of stuff go there. And then she had the house decorated, and that got a whole bunch of more stuff out. And then we worked on stuff everywhere. And so that when I went to the house, the weekend that she died, my brother-in-law came over, and he was walking around opening and closing doors in the kitchen. I'm like, what are you doing? And my engineer brother-in-law said, I'm assessing the project. He was looking in the cabinets to see where the squirrels' nests were, where it was going to be really jammed up and be a lot of work. And the truth was, we had been through the house so much, and she had done so much work that there weren't any. There were, you know, there was stuff there that she was using and she loved, but nothing was overstuffed or scrambled. And so I spent 11 days later with my sister undoing her house. But it wasn't horrible. It wasn't the clean out the snarl's nest after 20 years of no attention. It was dismantling a house that was in good shape. And that was much less of a burden for my sister and me than it would have been if she'd done nothing. And so anything that you do now is something that someone else doesn't have to come behind and do for you later, right? All of which to say, part of it is that you're doing it for people that comes behind, but part of it is you're doing it for yourself and how you live right now. You want to be in enjoying the place that you're in, and you want to be comfortable in it, and you want to feel like you're serving yourself well and taking care of yourself. And so you want to build this habit to help yourself. That's what we're aiming for. And so I hope that you make an attempt, and that you call me and say, I need you to tell me I did great, because if you send me a text, I will tell you you're awesome every single time. Okay? I have no problem with that. You do not have to be my client. You just send me a text and say, look what I did, and I will say, that rocks, you guys rock. I promise right now I will say that to anybody that sends me a text. I get texts from around, I get messages from around the country, people saying, oh, I've been watching the videos, and so I cleaned out the closet, and here's the picture. Awesome! Look at that's great! It makes me happy to declutter by remote control. So I'm happy for you guys to show me your progress, and I will tell you you are fabulous, because you are, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to stop, and I will see you guys. The next meetup is going to be live online, so watch for that data later. See you later. Thanks. Bye.